Hello everyone, hello and welcome to the third session of today's WCEF+Climate conference, live from the World Forum in The Hague, the Netherlands. This session is dedicated to exploring the role a circular economy plays in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Before we get started though, don't forget to join in our conversation. You've been doing a good job so far. If you have a question, ask away in the chat, and if there's enough time, we'll answer them later on in the program. You can share your thoughts in the same way, except if you're sharing your thoughts to criticize the event host, in which case I believe the official recommendation is that you save those comments to your draft boxes and keep them there for forever. Okay, it's time to introduce our guests. First, live in the studio with me once again is the Dutch Minister for the Environment, Stientje van Veldhoven. Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah.
And digitally, shortly, a guest who will also kick off this session with an opening address. It's the person who led the process that resulted in the creation of the Sustainable Development Goals, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations and Chair of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, Her Excellency Ms. Amina Mohammed. Ms. Mohammed will be joining us shortly, so perhaps this is a great opportunity to just reflect on the last two sessions. What do you think so far?
I think it has really been amazing to see the extent to which all of the partners that we've seen this morning are participating and joining forces to further this development into a circular economy. And I remember with Mrs. Mohammed, when we were preparing in the run-up to this conference, she said, I hope you'll give us some homework. And I must say, if we also see what the other UN agencies that we discussed in our first session, if we look at what they are doing, they're giving themselves an enormous amount of homework. But I really like the idea of let's not just talk about it, let's show how we can put these things in practice.
Yeah.
And that's also why I'm really proud to see that our action statement, all those commitments that they are real progress. They are progress towards a world with less pollution, with less biodiversity loss, and with a lot less CO2 emissions, safeguarding basically the livelihood of people across the planet.
Yeah.
And I'm also very happy that that we were able to put an accent on the fact that circular economy is not just recycling, but it's really trying to avoid creating waste, trying to reuse products as long as possible, trying to repair or share products. And in the end, if that's all not possible, then you recycle the material and ensure that it becomes a bright new material.
Yeah.
And also funny to see this on the table here.
Yeah, we're just talking about it. This is...
Yeah. Well, this is the remnants of old military and police uniforms. We used to, as the Dutch government, spend money on incinerating those uniforms. Because, of course, you don't want anybody to just pick up such a uniform and walk in the street. So we used to incinerate them, and that cost us a lot of money. But now we are selling the materials to a shredder that is making it into construction materials, but also into towels. And now we're actually making money on selling those.
It's crazy.
Materials.
We said it before, but it's not rocket science. You know, there are opportunities out there for people to make money and make the planet a better place.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the basic element is waste is a cost. So if you can avoid waste, you avoid the cost.
Yeah.
And that already creates, let's say, an amount of money which you can invest into reusing the products.
But we've also acknowledged that it's not just about great innovation. The government also has a role to play. And I remember watching you smiling away when we were talking with Joost, one of the business guys behind, what was it?
Closing the Loop.
Closing the Loop,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you were smiling particularly at the point when he was talking about a new Dutch law.
Yeah, well, I think what is really fantastic about what they are doing is the fact that they are creating an opportunity to become waste neutral. And so even if today your product is not such that it can already be recycled, you can still be waste neutral by ensuring that you collect waste through your production process or through organizations like Joost and Closing the Loop, in jointly ensuring that we reduce the amount of waste which is already out there. The first piece of plastic that was ever produced is still out there.
Yeah.
And we can change that. And initiatives like Joost, and there are many others across the globe, they do that. So that's, of course, you have to be when you see people so enthusiastic about such a great idea.
Absolutely. And there'll be more smiling because we're going to hear more examples of people doing good things throughout this session. Ms. Mohammed is still not available, so what we're going to do is jump straight ahead to introduce our panel guests. They're all here, very impressively lined up. It is an illustrious panel. I love using that word, illustrious, gentlemen, so consider yourselves illustrated. First of all, we have His Excellency Dr. Armando Lampa, the Minister of Education, Science and Sustainable Development in Aruba. Thank you very much for joining us. The Director General of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, His Excellency Mr. Lee Yong. Thank you for joining us. The CEO of waste management company Averda, Mr. Malek Sukar. Hello. And Mr. Norbert Kurila, the personal advisor to the President of Slovakia and the co-founder of Circular Slovakia. Thank you very much for joining us, Norbert. I just heard that Ms. Mohammed has actually joined us, but she's available. So I don't know. Do we want to go straight to Ms. Mohammed and talk to the gentleman later, or should we? Okay, gents. I will be talking to you soon, okay? So first of all, we're going to hear from Ms. Mohammed, okay?
That's going to happen. Do I go this way?
Yes, we can see you, Ms. Mohammed. Thank you for joining us. And
thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. And I would like to give you the floor for 2 or 3 minutes. We understand you're going to give us an opening address, as it were. I feel like I'm in the UN
in the
right
United
now.
Nations.
Exactly. Go for it.
You are. See the flag. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and colleagues, thank you to the Government of Netherlands and the Finnish Innovation Fund, Sitra, for organizing this discussion. I'm really, really happy to be with you. We know that today's production and consumption patterns are unsustainable, and they are at the root of today's triple planetary crisis: climate, biodiversity loss, and, of course, pollution. The impacts are falling most heavily on the poorest and most vulnerable members of the human family. Every year, we're seeing 400 million tons of heavy metals, toxic sludge, and other industrial waste dumped into the world's waters. And every year, food loss and waste are accounting for about $950 billion in lost value, on top of the incalculable costs of hunger and starvation. The oceans are overfished and overflowing with plastics pollution, and the mountains of waste keep growing higher and higher. Against this backdrop, we need a far more concerted effort to build a circular economy, put us on track to achieve the 2030 agenda, and of course the call for the net zero emissions by 2050. Governments currently, businesses and consumers will need to recognize this as an opportunity and not a burden. In that spirit, 3 steps I think are going to be essential. First, calling on all governments to incorporate a circular economy approach in their domestic legislation and development plans. By designing out waste and avoiding pollution and keeping materials in use as long as possible, we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions by about 20%. Second, we need to ensure a just transition to a circular economy to avoid deepening the inequalities of linear extractive models and protecting the livelihoods through new technologies and the job automation. Third, calling on business really in resource-intensive sectors such as plastics, food systems, textiles, mobility, technology, and the built environment to really think about designing for circularity and shifting to circular business models. Working towards a circular economy will also advance climate action and our efforts across all of the SDGs. And I think if we do this together, we can actually make the decade of action happen. Thank you, and I'm looking very much forward to our discussion.
Thank you very much for that address, Ms. Mohammed. Your reasons to embrace a circular economy are very clear, but we are in the middle of a pandemic, and people are very focused on vaccines and jobs. Why is now the time to be talking about shifting to a circular economy?
Well, I think first, the pandemic has really exposed to us where all these huge gaps are. And if we really are intent on having those green transitions, those blue transitions, then taking the opportunity of the response for a better and different recovery from the pandemic is essential. And now's the window of opportunity. It's about healing the world. It's about us really looking at the potential of the circular economy to ensure that we're looking at the market opportunities, because there will be new ones, the jobs and the products that could come out of this. So it's exciting for that intergenerational transition of young people who are going to be seeing this as their future and a new way of doing things. It will also add to the global economy considerable amounts of resources, which we can then better use and plow into sustainable development. And then I would say, last but not least, that when we're looking at what is happening in our financial institutions, it is now the opportunity for us to bring those capacities, knowledge, and skills so that we can mainstream this in what we're doing in terms of developing the investment pipelines for a good recovery.
Yeah, and I think adding to the global economy is something that really strikes me. It's something that was said by Dr. Kariuki in the previous session, is there all the e-waste at the moment in Africa is worth $3.2 billion, and it's just sitting there. Nothing's being done with it.
No. Well, it is polluting the world. That's what it's doing.
Yes, at the moment, yeah.
So there is a lot of value out there that we should harness, that we should use into creating a better world. And thank you so much, Amina Mohammed, for being here and for your excellent address. It's really fantastic to have you here.
How is the Netherlands, though, just to follow up from Ms. Mohammed's point, taking the opportunity for a response to the pandemic in order to create the shift to the circular economy? How's the Netherlands doing that?
Well, actually, I think the first point that Mr. Mohammed made is to see this as an opportunity, not a burden. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what we've done in the Netherlands. We've seen it as an opportunity to start using our resources better, thereby avoiding costs, because waste is a cost. We have enshrined circular economy into our national climate plans. We have a government-wide program that looks at both construction, consumer electronics, agriculture, production, so textiles, plastics. So we're changing this across the economy. And in the meantime, we're also developing, let's say, metrics. How do you measure if you are sufficiently in line and if you are working efficiently towards a circular economy? And we are also dedicating special attention. I had a very interesting discussion on that yesterday on the just transition in terms of the workforce. Because it's more than just education. Some sectors will have perhaps less employment, others will have more employment. And we need to help also people to make the change to those new sectors where they are crying to have enough people to work there. So, and I think also the sectors that she mentioned, mobility, of course, but also textiles. Let's please also talk about textiles. They are the second most polluting sector after the oil industry. And these are worldwide polluting sectors that can also clean up and where there's massive, massive room for improvement. And a lot of that is low-hanging fruit. So we can just decide to do it better, but then design for recycling, as she very eloquently pointed out, is absolutely what is needed. We need to design for a better future right from the start.
Yeah, so a lot of work still to do, a lot of work for Ms. Mohammed to do, which is why she's going to leave us shortly. But before you do, I have a last question for you. Ms. Mohammed, how can the UN, in its convening role as a global coordinator and using its extensive presence on the ground, ensure a more circular global economy?
Wow, yeah, a huge job. And I'm so glad that I've got my colleague from UNIDO who will be sharing some of those thoughts with you. I think first and foremost, we have an opportunity in the response to COVID, which is coming through a little more fiscal space, stimulus packages, our big focus on the triple crisis for climate, for biodiversity, for the environment. We see that the green transitions and the blue transitions are something that we can begin to invest in. Energy transitions, connectivity, all of those will have value in us looking at this differently from the lens of the circular economy. But that's going to have a number of capacities and skills and convening. And here I think the UN's footprint on the ground, we're in over 130 countries, UN country teams, pulling together the expertise of the UN system, but convening other expertise that obviously requires the partnerships for the circular economy. This is a new narrative to many countries, and we don't want them to add it on. We want them to see the value of it, and so really need to have a conversation about their short and long-term plans and how to profit for some of the investments that they could put in now. Not reinvent the tools. There are many that are there, and that's why the partnerships are so important, and that we try to scale that up. On the other side, in the UN itself, I mean, we have to sort of walk. They say walk the talk, but talk the talk, going beyond the talking the talk, walking it. So internally, what we do with our footprint, and we have got Greening the Blue, and we hope that we will see extensively in our secretariat, in our field offices, but particularly in our peacekeeping missions. So on the one hand, providing the policy and tools, the partnerships and the convening to get this done and to support countries who are willing to lean forward on these transitions, just transitions. And on the other hand, making sure that we are fit for purpose and we are walking the talk.
Very clear. And to find out if you're fit for purpose and you're talking the walk, or walking the... I'm doing it. Thank you, Stientje. I'm going to shortly speak to your colleague, Mr. Yong, to see what he's doing at UNIDO. But thank you very, very much for joining us, Ms. Mohammed.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to the next discussion and hopefully in implementing the circular economy around our countries to really push the decade of action for the SDGs.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Yong, you heard it there. Tell us, how are you integrating the circular economy and the SDGs into your organization at UNIDO? Give us some practical examples. How are you doing it?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think just now, Mohammed, the DSG, mentioned about the UNIDO's mandate. We are now promoting inclusive and sustainable industrial development and create shared prosperity and advance competitiveness in developing middle-income countries through our operations. For instance, some of the international agreements, Montreal Protocol, Global Environment Facility, Minamata Conventions, now, of course, the Green Climate Fund. Circular economy is an important concept within our mandate. It reduces the use of resources, wastewater, and pollution, and it mitigates climate change. At the same time, it increases productivity and also creates lots of jobs for developing countries. Some of the good examples I just would like to illustrate that. One of the joint UNIDO-EU collaboration with 8 North African countries, for instance, Algeria, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Morocco, and the state of Palestine and Tunisia. This project helped 125 SMEs and deployed cost-effective and green technologies. As a result, these companies are saving nearly 200 tons of CO2, 34,000 tons of raw materials, and 3.5 million cubic meters of water annually. This annually, with additional investments that companies leverage, they managed to create new jobs as well. Numbers from UNIDO's collaboration with Switzerland is another example, with a total investment of 10.3 million US dollars in Indonesia. 149 SMEs in 11 provinces actually benefit from this project.
Mr. Yong,
give you numbers of that.
What I'm hearing is that you are doing a lot of work.
Greenhouse gas emission annually, and also the financial savings of 19.6 million US dollars annually. Those are you compare with investment and output annually. This is a kind of contribution to the climate change, reduce the waste. Also help the creating jobs as well.
Indeed, and you spelled out the money saving in a very very detailed slide, I can see, which essentially is saying that you're saving
generates
millions.
money.
Exactly. You're investing millions, and it's in the circular economy, and it's generating almost double the amount at the end. So, and
That
to be honest,
annually also.
and that's just annually, exactly. And you're involved in lots of projects around the world. And I guess I would expect that. I would expect these sorts of developments at the UN. But I'm curious about the private sector because let's go to Mr. Sukar. Is the circular economy and the SDGs even a priority for you?
Thank you. The principle over the past few years was something that we were trying to do, and we found a few willing individuals and companies that wanted to sort of partner with us to move forward with the SDGs, specifically around the circular economy. And it was a bit sporadic, especially in the areas where we operated, where there was little regulatory or governmental help, whether in money or in law. And what we found with time was there was a very big lag from what was happening in Northern Europe specifically, and some of the countries that we're operating in. And then over the past few years, it's almost like someone flipped a switch, and the ESG revolution sort of came in, and everybody started really worrying. And it got empowered even more by some of the larger FMCG companies making the kind of promises or commitments to say that we're going to recycle everything by 2025. It sort of galvanized the movement. And no more so. And I don't want to be controversial, but it really only started moving when the financial sector started measuring the ESG scores. And companies were not getting their loans or were not having access to capital as readily as they would by being a non-recycler.
Please, Mr. Sukar.
Sorry?
Can you clarify what ESGs are, please?
It's environmental and social and governance scores. So there are companies that come and rate your organization and give you a score against how well you do, whether reducing your carbon footprint and other things. And so the finance world has taken this as a very big impact investment direction. And whilst the SDGs may be the directional signposts, ESG has become the road that everybody's sort of taking towards there. And with the flow of money, so that the flow of the corporation's investment. And I think we're seeing a lot of acceleration now in terms of the circular economy. We're getting a lot of incoming questions. How can we do this here? What can we do with the plastic that we're creating? And it's quite positive to see, especially in the areas where we operate.
Very clear. And it's interesting because one of your colleagues, Kitty van der Heijden, also highlighted the importance of metrics, the importance of science, and how we need to be able to measure the progress.
Absolutely. It's regulation combined with metrics, because you need to identify what are the elements on which you have to score, and then you have to know how to measure how you score.
Yeah.
But then it can be a very, very powerful instrument. And I really think this is a great example of how these kind of corporations basically can work in practice.
Yeah. Okay, so the business sector is waking up. It's embracing the link between the circular economy and the SDGs. But what about in the political national context? Minister Lampe, how does the government of Aruba stimulate that link? Ooh, you're on mute at the moment. I don't know if you can unmute yourself or if we have a connection problem. Unfortunately, we have a connection problem at the moment.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can... you're online.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Yes. Aruba is a small island in the Caribbean Sea in front of the coast of Venezuela. And we are now an autonomous country within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And our economy depends heavily on tourism. And due to the COVID crisis, we know that the tourist industry has been one of the big losers. And for us, the question of circular economy and sustainable development goals is a matter of survival. In the first place, we know that those most affected by the climate change will be the small islands, indeed also in the Caribbean Sea. And therefore, we have decreed as a government our strategic plan, national plan for education 2030, because it is linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. I am Minister of Education and Minister of Sustainable Development, because education that is not serving sustainable development is meaningless, because we have to give tools to the future generation how to survive and to save this unique planet that we have. And we have decreed also the vision circular economy 2050, because it takes one generation, 30 years, because our approach is that to reach the goals of circular economy, we need a change in our lifestyle, to go to a simpler lifestyle, because our consumerism, our economic model based on throwaway culture is not sustainable. And the tourist industry as we have now is not sustainable. So we have to move forward to another lifestyle, but that takes a generation for that change of mentality. And we have our national strategic plan, where the economic recovery after the COVID crisis is linked to indeed promote more internal economy, more the vision of the circular economy, using, because we are heavily dependent on imports. So we have to stimulate more our own, for example, our food safety. And we have to, as was said, also see to reduce our waste and see waste as a commodity.
Yeah,
And
that's very clear.
so
And-
we have
and
to move forward.
And Minister, I'm really pleased, especially that you mentioned survival, because I think that's, we forget to underline why failure is not an option here, because this is about people's lives, But before we reflect on all of your statements with Stientje, let's go to you, Mr. Kurila. What's the Slovakian experience? Your organization, Circular Slovakia, certainly ticks the name box. How is the circular economy being embraced in Slovakia?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. I would say that through a variety of approaches, and I would perhaps mention a few, how we embrace the link, especially circular economy and sustainable development goals. So we're making 4 major activities related to advocacy and partnerships, which actually Circle Slovakia platform is exactly doing the right thing, and I will talk about it in more detail later. We're doing also the strategies and the policy level endeavor to embrace circular economy. We do, of course, the legislation, which is a kind of a hard stuff to basically help embracing the circular economy, and we also do the voluntary actions. So I will maybe focus on a couple of them and tell you a couple of examples. So when I talk about a strategy, we have just freshly adopted on the government level a new national governmental strategy on SDGs, where circular economy is very well featuring, is very well embedded, and we see lots of interconnections there, which is actually an excellent opportunity how to embark. Equally, we work with the OECD now on the national roadmap on circular economy that is being really soon. We will present it to the public, where I would mention 4 or 5 sectors are very well addressed. For example, many of them, of course, mentioned, like plastics, food industry, textiles, construction, electronic waste, and many others. In terms of legislation, luckily we are a member of the European Union, so we have already a very high standard, but beyond the legislation, we are introducing, for example, deposit refund schemes for plastic bottles, for aluminium cans that will enter into force as of January 2022, putting a price and making basically a motivation return and not to basically displace it and dispose it wherever. Another concrete example is to bring legislation that supports circularity and actually financially helps materials that are easy to recycle, to reuse, to have actually lower levies and charges compared to those one who actually pollutes and are the cause of the pollutions. And last but not least, I would also mention the voluntary activities and the civic movement and inclusion, where we actually, both on company levels, but also beyond the company levels, are going basically beyond the standards and tackling the circular economy.
Wow, it sounds like there's a lot happening in Slovakia, everyone. Thank you very much for that. Stientje, a short reaction to what we've heard so far?
Well, I love the fact that there's both the hard stuff and the voluntary contribution, and I think that's a very powerful combination. If we look at the Netherlands, we have legislation, but we also signed with, I think, nearly 300 partners now, the European Plastic Pact, where all kinds of organizations, governments, and private companies came together and said, we can go further and faster if we do this jointly. And I think that's really amazing if you see what happens once people start to get a grip of how much money you can save by investing and avoiding costs and avoiding also water and pollution. If you think about if the incentives are right, what this will do in a change of habit within companies. And I think the example of Aruba really clearly illustrates that this is a worldwide challenge and a worldwide necessity. It's nice to do it, but it's not a nice to do. It is about survival, especially for tourism sectors across the world. So I really think this is something which links all of us, and these are great examples of the benefits of working on the circular economy.
Yeah, absolutely. We've heard about a lot of those benefits. Okay, so we've heard from our high-level guests so far. Now it's time to hear from the people on the ground, putting the circular economy into practice firsthand, and doing that in a region of the world that's used circular principles for generations, Africa.
Africa generates 22 million tons of urban plastic waste every year. Most of the plastic ends up in our environment, rivers, oceans, and are made from virgin plastic. Collecting and processing plastic to produce high-quality post-consumer recyclate will offer us a circular way out of this problem and create decent and sustainable jobs in and for emerging markets. I'm Kieran Smith, co-founder and CEO of Mr. Green Africa. Over the past years, we've been able to build a tech-enabled platform that manages and aggregates plastic waste from the streets all the way to a high-quality food-grade PCR. This enabled our customers to remove over 4,600 metric tons of plastic waste today. We have also been able to include over 2,000 waste pickers into our network, earning fair, transparent and predictable income from our buyback centers and other collection channels that today collect between 50 to 80 metric tons of plastic waste every week. And I think this is really significant. Let's reimagine plastics from waste to value. A local, fair, profitable and transparent clean resource that enables a localized circular plastics economy. Together, we can close the loop.
Now, very, very clear pitch there. And we have the CEO and founder of Mr. Green Africa, a Kenyan company changing the perception of recycling, Kieran Nicholas Smith, with us. Kieran, thank you for joining us. You mentioned the huge potential there of your company. Just how big could Mr. Green Africa get?
Yes, thanks so much for having me here. I think there's a lot of economic value. If you look at some reports out there, as it has been mentioned, there's billions of dollars being wasted every year. And I think companies like ourselves can truly engage into this economic opportunity and create a localized circular economy. And obviously, what is the biggest element here is also the social and the environmental narrative. In our case, we're a big advocate for the people, the informal people who've always been for the longest in these value chains and trying to create honest livelihoods out of it. And we're sort of really the voice to on the global stage to make sure that when we talk about solutions, when we talk about circular economy solutions, let's make sure we include those people, and not just for a social benefit, but also to accelerate, to close the loop quicker. Yeah, so that's what I see. And I think it needs many Mr. Greens. It's not just one.
Exactly. And about that point, are there many, do you have many competitors locally in Kenya?
Well, no, in the form as we do it, the way we were able to include the value chain sort of from an informal perspective to bring them into a more formal perspective and combine it with this value addition. In that sense, this combination is, I think, the secret sauce, and that's what needs more of it. And obviously, as we build these collection systems and these networks, we're looking for more partners that are looking to do the value addition in various different regions. On the continent, but in general in the global south. And I see a lot of partnership potential across the entire value chain.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we have another entrepreneur with us who has his own secret sauce, I suspect. But first of all, let's run a video featuring Compost Kitchen. It's a South African company focusing on properly composting organic waste. Composting, it should be. Are we going to run that video? If we don't have the video, I can go straight to the CEO who we have here. Okay.
The Compost Kitchen is an organic waste recycling business, and we collect food waste from households. Food waste is like things like banana peels, and then we feed it to earthworms, which make something called vermicompost, which is just their feces. The earthworms eat it and they produce the feces, which is really rich in biology. And then we give the vermicompost back to customers at the end of the month. They use the vermicompost in their gardens, especially vegetable gardens, to grow organic produce again, and they can also use it in pot plants and sensitive plants. The Compost Kitchen started in 2017 because South Africa was having quite a bad drought then, but I felt like we weren't quite solving that water management problem. And the solution that I realized that we need to do in South Africa is repair our soil, and repair the soil by putting organic matter back into the soil. The organic matter makes the soil act like a sponge. It holds onto the water and lets it infiltrate. So we've started the business with the vision of improving South Africa's water security by repairing the soil. The award that we won is from the United Nations. It's from a program called NTRIPS. And it's like the Oscar Awards for sustainability. And they were particularly impressed that we're a business making impact. We're proving that you can do business, you can make a living, but you can change society, you can improve society. So the more business we do, the better off society is. In the next few years, we're trying to develop a new way to look at waste management. So we're developing a model where customers can buy a worm box from us. A worm box is something you can use to make vermicompost at home. And then we will buy back the vermicompost from them and then sell it to our customers. So this would allow people to earn income from their waste at home, and it will allow us to obtain a large quantity of compost without having a massive facility.
I want a worm box. Do you want a worm box as well?
Absolutely, and I think then if your children don't eat all of their plates, then at least it goes to good use.
Exactly.
But what I like very much, this is not about avoiding things getting worse, this is about repairing and actively making things better. And that's exactly the solution that the circular economy brings to our world, making it better.
And we have the founder and CEO of Compost Kitchen with us too, Himkar Singh. Welcome, Himkar. Can you hear us? I would hope so.
Hi,
with those headphones.
Yes.
I would hope so. Himkar, listen, your business is one of the few businesses globally that really flourished during the pandemic. Tell us how.
Yeah, actually, we did quite well post-COVID compared to before COVID, and we saw almost double increase in sign-ups for our recycling service during the COVID time. And we've continued to grow very strongly during COVID, and we think it's because people have been spending more time at home, and they've been noticing how much waste they're actually producing and becoming conscious of it, and then started looking for solutions of what to do about it. So, you know, when they come across our solution, they sign up immediately. We don't have to do too much convincing. So that means that people are already looking for solutions like this. We just need more people to create them. And it was also a really negative time during the first few months of COVID, which was coupled with Black Lives Matter. So we were getting extremely negative media from everywhere. But our business is an extremely positive one. It has a lot of inspiration and action. So it attracted people to come and get, let's call it hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been doing quite well since COVID. It's quite odd.
And tell me, why did you choose to set up a circular business specifically in the agricultural sector? Was there something more to it than just coming up with than having a passion for worms?
Yeah, well, in 2017, South Africa was having a bad drought, and I had thought back to 20 years before that when I had went to primary school, and they had warned me that if I didn't save water, then there would be drought issues in the future. So I thought they warned us 20 years ago, but it still happened. So I decided to leave the country to study a master's degree in water management based in Germany to try and find a solution. And I lived in Germany for 5 months, and then Vietnam for 5 months, and then Jordan for 5 months, trying to get all different perspectives on water management. And then the solution that I realized that we need to do is repair our soil. And it just happens that the way to do that is, one of the best ways to do that is to put organic matter back into the soil. So we started the business with the intention to fix that problem.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you both. And you're both staying with us for more discussion of the economic potential of the circular economy. And we'll come back to you both later. But if there's one thing that both of those videos illustrate, and that's that a circular transition is also an opportunity to improve economic competitiveness, enhance economic growth, and create jobs. They've done it. They've created their own companies. A study by UNEP apparently even estimated that the circular economy can add 1.8 trillion euros, everyone, to the European economy by 2030. Mr. Sukar, what's the most important thing a business needs to have in place in order to ensure a successful circular strategy?
Quite simply, we need to drive demand, because at the end of the day, the technology for recycling and creating circularity from the moment that we get our hands on the waste is now fairly robust and can be processed. But if you end up with mountains of recycled plastic or recycled metals, then the whole circle breaks, and you can never do that. And so when we look at let's take a very simple example, and Kieran was just demonstrating. I think it was a Unilever picture there, taking all of this plastic. Maybe 10 years ago, there would have been a struggle to try to get quantities of plastic out of any of the recycling plants across the world. And today, because of the commitment that everybody's doing, that drives industry and people to start a new business or to invest in new plants. And if you look at the opposite, where you had aluminium that we've been using for decades and decades, that's never been an issue because there was always a circular treatment for it. People found a lot of value in it, and they were collecting it from the days of the cans or whether it's from crushed cars. That was never an issue. So demand is really where we need to sort of focus if we want to drive the circle quicker. But that's my opinion. And
How do we stimulate demand then? Does the business sector have a suggestion?
Regulation, and we have a quite a strong generation coming in that has no interest in continuing business as usual, right? They're not going to be happy drinking from a bottle that never gets recycled or eating from a plate that gets thrown away. So I think we're seeing two things. We're seeing governments react to this pressure from the consumer, but at the same time, I think you're seeing government stepping up and saying, we can't afford to have this kind of waste management that just, takes and never sees it again. And so there is a confluence on this, and it's quite an exciting time to be.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yes, Stientje.
Legislation, that's absolutely key, I'd say. So if every government in the world would make one very simple law that says every piece of plastic produced in my country must contain 30% of recycled material, then we have solved our plastic problem.
Why stop at 30 though?
Well, grow afterwards, but allow for the industry to catch up a little bit.
Okay.
But already if we start there, it can be as simple as that.
Yeah.
That's
But
exactly
Mr. Sukar, is that ambitious enough? Is 30% ambitious enough? Or do you think the business...
I think it's a great start. I think it's a great start. I think, there are research that says we're only recycling about 9%. So if we triple that very quickly, I think that's excellent, right? And we can go from there, as the minister has mentioned. But I think you need to win. You can't put goals that never get attained. It depresses the consumer and industry alike. So I think we need to feel like we're winning. So 30 is a very realistic and achievable target.
Minister Lampe, it's clear you need to introduce the 30% law. When are you going to do that? Oh, I'm sorry, you're on mute again. We can't hear you.
Yes. As Mrs. van Veldhoven said, we are taking some small steps. We already introduced policies banning single-use plastic bags, foam, sunscreen that causes damage to all coral reefs out of necessity. And those are small initiatives. On a small island, it has advantages and disadvantages for the circular economy. The advantage is you can establish it easily in a small economy. Mm-hmm. Disadvantage is we are so heavily dependent on external funds because we have limited funds. And both initiatives that we have developed here in the direction of that the knowledge is power for this issue of circular economy, we have established a faculty on sustainable island solutions, and with funding of the European Union, and that at our National University of Aruba, and also has been established a private university, Tesla University, to do research on alternative energies, because we are surrounded by sea. We have a lot of sun and heavy wind, and but both are also with funding, external funding.
Okay. Which sustainable island solution? This is your opportunity to pitch for funding. Let's say, let's imagine that. Is there one particular sustainable island solution that you think, right? This is the one that can really give us a boost.
Yes, I think because we are so heavily dependent on tourism, we receive before the COVID, naturally, more than 2 million tourists on a very small island. So our main issue now, how to reduce the amount of waste that tourist industry is producing. We also are receiving a lot of cruise ships here. They are all producing waste. So we have a problem how to manage the amount of waste that this economy is producing. So really, that would be the main challenge for us.
I wish you could see Mr. Sukai's face there. He was stroking his beard, thinking, "I think this sounds like an opportunity." Am I wrong?
There's new partnerships right here, right?
Exactly. I see some magic happening there.
Very smiling faces, so that's a good direction.
It's a good reason to come to Aruba, indeed. Okay, we've seen two inspiring circular companies in Africa, but I want even more inspiration. So, Lee, can you give us some examples of circular projects supported by UNIDO, and perhaps you have a personal favorite?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think UNIDO have lots of programs, as you mentioned, actually serving the circular economy and dealing with climate change issues. One of the examples that chemical leasing, the project supported by the UNIDO, Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, start from 2004. It's a program we understand that 1 kilogram cotton garments consume 3 kilograms of chemicals. How to reduce the use of chemicals and saving water and the resources. This is a program we carried out for so many years and received a lot of benefit from this program. And the second example is that we, through our National Cleaner Production Center, this is also supported by Switzerland for decades, and actually help a company to save the water, energy, and raw materials. I think also particularly, I would just like to indicate that 63% of chemicals and 27% additives in the Columbia textile manufacturer programs. This is a very big benefit received not only in money terms, also dealing with climate change. Circular economy concept is very strong in this, embedded in this program. Finally, another example is eco-industrial park. I visit Vietnam eco-industrial park. The companies in the industrial park introduced this eco policy, cost saving, food, water, energy, raw materials, and then private companies could use those resources, money saved, to make it reinvestment into the operations. So this is a snowball rolling for the benefits of the company, individuals, companies, at the same time contribute to the global efforts for the climate change.
Very clear.
There are so many this kind of programs, projects for decades UNIDO implementing.
It's so good because I can see you getting also excited about the projects.
Programs. We will continue this process. Thank you.
I'm pleased to hear that. Mr. Curillo, you're smiling. I can see that you also get inspired by the enthusiasm from Mr. Yong and his projects. Tell us what's going on in Slovakia. How circular is the business sector in Slovakia? And are there particular projects that you think we all here could learn from?
Absolutely. But I would be very pleased to share the idea and actually a success story linked to Circular Slovakia, which is actually a very successful business-driven platform to support and accelerate circular economy. It was founded only in December 2019, and up to today, it has almost 60 members. It is a legal, the entity of legal companies. And it is a truly inspirational example of collaborative approach put together by public, private, and non-state actors, and including also our Dutch partners based in Slovakia. And many thanks goes to Holland Circular Hotspot, which was quite instrumental in supporting and in cooperating with us. And basically, coming to concrete examples, so this platform is really successful for the Central European perspective, and doing three major things, and then I will elaborate on concrete projects. So for this year, we focus on trainings for mentors and coaches, because we feel that there is not enough people that can share the idea of circular economy. Second, we're going locally and regionally closer and support circularity projects there, and I would now mention a few of them. Like, for example, using the methane or landfill gas to heat the greenhouses, or using more circularity in the packaging for the logistics industry, or even a very nice example, which is very dear to my heart. It's talking not only about the recycling, but the upcycling, basically creating higher value than just the recycling, using the plastic materials from PET bottles, which can be turned into textiles used in automotive sector, for example. Slovakia is automotive superpower, and I see a great producing the most cars in the world per capita. So I see a great example how to link circular economy also with the automotive sector. And by the way, when seeing the CEO from UNIDO, the Secretary General, we jointly organized in 2018 a conference on circularity in automotive sectors. So these partnerships and advocacy really plays a good game. And of course, last but not least, it's also a project linked to digitalization. And for example, one of the companies, they are doing really, really well in terms of smart waste management, Internet of Things, and those projects making links with circular economy and digitalization are extremely successful, also growing, European and worldwide.
Thank you very much. Those are clear, innovative. Yeah, no, you spelled out some great examples there. Lots of
On
innovation.
top of this, they also bring ideas and shape also the strategies and the policy level I was mentioning in my initial statement, like a roadmap for circular economy in Slovakia.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to, at this point, turn the tables a little bit and give our two entrepreneurs, Himka and Kieran, the opportunity to ask you some questions, our panelists. First of all, Himka, are you online? Are you still with us?
Yes.
Oh,
Thanks.
he is. Great. Himka, you have a question for Minister van Veldhoven, I understand.
Yes, when we started the business, it was a circular economy business, but it was very difficult to find other case studies or examples to understand how it exactly works from a perspective of a startup. So where can entrepreneurs go these days to connect with other examples of circular economy business, especially in Netherlands?
Well, thanks for your great question. That's exactly actually why we set up the Acceleration House. This is a website, versnellingshuis.nl, where you can go, or .com. I'm sorry, I'm not,
That's okay.
sure. But Het Versnellingshuis. And there you can find examples also of other entrepreneurs. That's our platform which we want to use to share knowledge. But what I like very much about the comment made by Slovakia is also teach the teachers. Let's spread the message. So spreading the message, sharing knowledge is actually one of the most important things that I think we need to do in trying to scale up and to speed up the development towards a circular economy. So we have our special website for this, and there you can get in touch with other Dutch entrepreneurs.
Okay, that's a very clear answer. Kieran, do you have a question you'd like to ask?
Yeah, sure. I have a question for Averda actually, and I would be curious to know. I mean, for an underdog like Mr. Green Africa, and a fast-growing company, and is playing in this field of collection and trying to really create a value out of the resources that the consumer doesn't really understand. It is a resource. How can companies like ourselves collaborate with a corporate like Averda and really have a fair chance for such a collaboration and accelerate the speed when it comes to creating a change, especially in an emerging market context?
Okay. Thank you, Kieran. Excellent question. Yeah, we like all companies, sort of that operate in this, are running a little bit behind the curve, and at some level will take any sort of help from entrepreneurs and people who have ideas. We have a huge challenge ahead of us, and only recently we have committed to have a unit within the company just to support such actions, especially in markets where we're not in. I mean, like Kenya, for example. We're not there. We're in South Africa, and would love to also hear from Himka to come and see us there. But we are opening the closet, so to speak, and showing everything we have, and whichever way we can to increase the circularity in these markets is always a great outcome. And whether we end up investing with a company like Mr. Clean Africa or not becomes a secondary issue. But the first is, how can we, share some of our learnings, hear from you, because your experience with the social aspect, for example, is very inspiring, and we would love to hear ways. We have a lot of informals that come onto some of our sites and create some issues for us. And if you've managed to crack the code, we would love to hear it.
Okay, so another appointment live on stage
Exactly.
here. That's great.
Exactly. You're going to be a busy man, Mr. Suka. Off to Aruba, off to Kenya.
And off to South Africa too.
And South Africa. Do you have a reaction to that, Kieran?
South Africa, I used to go there once every 2 months. It's a beautiful country. So, that's...
Kieran, was that a satisfactory answer for you?
Thanks so much for that answer. And I think definitely we definitely have some touch points, especially on the informal element on how one can formalize that and how can we make it more traceable, more fair, more just, more equitable. And so would love to continue the conversation, and I'll definitely try to get the contacts, and so we can have a chat.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's happening before our eyes.
Yes, and this is how it needs to go, right? Bring people together and jointly we can go beyond what we used to be able to, and we can go faster too, because we're running out of time. We have lots to do in little time. So
Yes. Listen, thank you, Kieran. Thank you, Himka, and to all of our panelists for all of your insightful answers. Thank you very much. So, as you may have seen during our opening today, drummers from around the globe have gathered in a joint rhythm. They've started a drum beat as a symbol of the momentum we want to build throughout our conference, with every session, with every conversation, idea, and commitment to embrace and implement a circular economy. So as a kind of final roundup, I'd like to ask each of our panelists to briefly tell us how they want to keep the drumbeat going. What will they do in order to ensure that the circular economy remains at the top of their priority lists? Let's start with you, Mr. Kurila, at the end.
Yes, I will now maybe change my hats from circular Slovakia platform to advisor to the president of Slovakia. So the office of Madam President Chaputova wants to lead by example and actually setting very ambitious targets to be actually climate neutral by 2030 and more circular. So, I mean, we can, with soft powers, we can really do many things. Inter alia, we are trying to bring ideas like, changing mobility for more electrification, going zero waste, installing renewable energy, having more energy efficiency gains, planting trees, using digitalization, having more circular gifts, providing local food for official gatherings, using tap water, banning single-use plastics. So those are very concrete and precise steps that can turn into massive actions by many others. And Madam President is really the greatest example and actually a green leader who can lead the way and inspire many others. So that's what I would actually say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kurila. Mr. Sukar, how will you keep the drumbeat going, apart from booking post-corona tickets to Aruba, South Korea, South Africa, maybe South Korea, who knows? Who knows? How will you keep the drumbeat going, sir?
So a couple of months ago, we sat together as a leadership team in the company. And we looked at our, mission and purpose. And what we discovered is, whilst it was, a cleaner world, leads to better lives, we thought that, the world has moved on from just being in a clean place. And, we've changed it now to a world without waste. And with that, we've made a commitment that 90% of our capital expenditure every year will go towards machines and equipment and facilities and people and training that are focused around circular economy, to the point that we will start recycling more than 90% of the flows that comes through our machines and fleet. And so from that internal commitment, I hope we can keep the drumbeat going and maybe spread some cheer across Kenya and elsewhere in the world.
Well, there was a collective from Stientje and I, just exhalation when we heard 90%. I think that's great. It's great to hear.
Fantastic.
Mr. Yong, how are you keeping the drumbeat going at Unidome?
We are really moving ahead with this momentum. Just a few examples. One of that is we just joined the EU and the UNEP, our colleague agency, together promote World Alliance for the Circular Economy and the Resource Efficiency. This is a kind of very important initiative, actually, to bring the government together to create a kind of policy support, because we need to have this momentum with a strong support from legislation, policies, good environment for promoting the circular economy. Second example is that we started already a round of the consultation of the international community, particularly our member states, on the circular economy, as try to seek the partnership, because the PPP is so important for the promoting the circular economy. Public and private partnership is so important for us to move ahead. Finally, this is a kind of agenda. We need innovation. We need a technology exchange, sharing best practices among member countries in the international community. So in concrete, we have some programs, operations moving ahead. And I appreciate the Minister of the Environment from the Netherlands give us some of the perspective of Netherlands government efforts moving ahead with circular economy. I certainly would like to appreciate that. Would like to see more support from Netherlands to share the experience with us, with our member countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Minister Lampe, very briefly, I'm afraid, but how would you keep the drumbeat going?
By continue investing part of our national budget in educational projects for sustainable development. We just approved a project to make the shift to a more skills-based education, vocational education linked to circular economy principles. We are establishing greenhouses in different schools. And I think also the reality is pushing us forward, because the new normal, part of the new normal, has to be the principles of circular economy, because the normal, we cannot go back to the normal way of life. That was part of the problem. We were disconnected from nature. Now, the new normal is forcing us to be again connected with nature and is pushing us forward to achieve the sustainable development goals.
Beautifully put. Thank you very much, Minister Lampe. Stientje, do you have a final reaction?
Well, yes, I think the old normal was the abnormal, and circular economy is again back to the old normal. I think that's very powerfully put. Mr. Jung, I think we have an appointment and we're going to share more information. Very happy to do that. And I think what also would be great is to bring together GACERE, which is the governments and the international organizations, with the private sector. For example, through the platform for the acceleration of the circular economy, of which I'm on the board, it's from the World Economic Forum. Bringing those two together, I think, would create a very powerful coalition for accelerating this transition. So I think that would be absolutely fantastic. I think we need to ensure that the circular economy becomes integrated in the sustainable development agendas. I look forward very much to seeing the UN report on sustainable consumption and production. I'm sure it's going to be well featured there on circular economy. And I also think that the just transition to a circular economy, I hope, I feel, I will, that it should prominently figure in all of the voluntary national reviews that are coming up. Mm-hmm. So as a cross-cutting systemic transition, because that is basically what we've been discussing here today. And of course, the Netherlands is very much committed to reaching our target of 100% circularity in 2050, 50% in 2030. And that means that we will have to work with all of you in as fast as we can. Legislation plays a key role, public procurement plays a key role, designing for circularity plays a key role, education plays a key role. Well, so we need to work on all of these fronts and we cannot do that alone. So thank you for joining forces with us.
Yeah, joining forces. I think that's, two key words that come out of this for me. Thank you very much to all of our guests, Minister Armando Lampe, Mr. Director General Li Yong, Malek Sukar, and Mr. Norbert Kurila. Thank you very much. And of course to you, my co-host, Minister van Veldhoven. Thank you. Yeah. In half an hour, we will close day one of the WCEF+Climate on this channel. But in 15 minutes, we'll also start a discussion on the climate finance nexus on Channel 2. On Channel 3, you can, of course, watch Circularity TV. And on Channel 4, you can watch maybe a 6-hour video of us trying to think up some more funny puns. Circularity TV. Just kidding. Okay, no such video exists. I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow or at the next session. So thank you and take care.